evening, everybody. This is the July 10th work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. As usual, we have an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda at this point. I don't have any speaker cards for that, and I don't see anybody rushing up, so we'll move on to item number 1, which is the Community Development Block Grant Program Update for FY 17-18. I see a procession of staff coming in.
So we have completed this program year and wanted to just give you an overview of how those community development block grants were used. So we have Tom and Kathleen with us to take you through that.
Thank you, Mayor and Eric, Alderman. Thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you tonight. Just a quick update tonight. It's kind of a first report of this kind for you, so it's kind of a work in progress, and we look forward to your questions and feedback about other things you would like to know about the program on a kind of a regular recurring basis. We definitely want to start coming to you like twice a year to give you updates with what we've done and where we're going with the program. As you see, for the program year just completed, June 30th, we were granted $263,690 overall. The top chart just reminds you of how we plan to expend those funds in the different program areas. The community-based development organization, homeownership and fair housing counseling, and then administration. And then the second chart, we know that there's kind of a keen priority to actual new units constructed if possible. And so we broke down in that area what we did with the community-based development organization funds so far this year. And that's one thing we obviously need to remember, is that the funds are granted for a particular program year, but they are expended over multiple years. So as you can see, the bottom line there, for that particular new housing construction area, in that area, so far this year, we've only expended $75,000 of the $200 that we had allocated. And so we still have $125,000 remaining to be spent. We have that programmed, and as you can see how we're working with our partners to expend those funds still from this program year, but it'll be going forward next year or until we get it all spent. The bottom group, there again, just wanted to clarify the specific areas that are the non-new construction. So that's our fair housing counseling and the administration, and just give you an update on where we are with those funds and in that category. As you can see, we've expended $43,000, $951, and still have $18,000 remaining to be spent in those categories. So that's the overall view for this year. Like I said, it's just a snapshot. We want to get to you now, let you know how we're doing, and the intent would be to come back again 6 months from now or so and let you know how we're going with program year for 2019. I just wanted to mention to everyone, we've already approved, or you have already approved, our action plan for fiscal year 2019, and we do have the funds allocated. And for fiscal year 2019, our allocation was $318,000. And like I said, our intent will be to come back to you in about 6 months or so and let you know how we're doing with expending those funds. In your packet tonight, there's another sheet there with the new and rehabilitated housing units that we covered kind of the last 5 years. And we know that that's a priority for actual new construction and rehabilitation. So that's something else we want to highlight for you on a regular basis as to what we've done with our partners and through our partners with those funds. The other thing that that chart shows you, in addition to the specific CDBG funds that we've expended, we've got other funds like the Affordable Housing Reserve fees in lieu, and also if there was, like for Habitat for Humanity, a specific land purchase grant to assist them in building a house. So that's the second chart, and that's something that we'll try to keep in front of you on a regular basis also. Number of housing units constructed new, and one of the other things reflected there is the rehabilitated units, the emergency repair program, because we know that's one of the keys also, is maintaining our current stock of moderately priced housing. So that's all we have for tonight, and we're welcome questions or guidance and things you want us to bring back to you later.
Alderman Martin and Alderman Braintree.
What did you say you're using the $125,000 for?
That is funds that are allocated specifically towards the community-based development organization.
What's
So
that
that's new
mean?
construction.
Okay.
In the city of Franklin, we have 2 partners who qualify as a community-based development organization, Community Housing Partnership and the Mount Hope Hard Bargain Redevelopment Agency. So with those 2 partners, those funds go specifically for new home construction.
Would you split it between them or
Yes,
just wait until they ask for it?
We
For what?
have over the years, this particular report is just a snapshot for fiscal year 18. And over the years, those funds have been split between those two agencies. And it shows in this chart, those funds are allocated for 2018. So unless there's a problem going forward, those agencies have those
Okay.
funds to spend for FY 18.
That's good, thank you.
Alderman Bransford.
The Roundup program,
Yes, ma'am.
where is that on that? Did I miss it, or is it?
That's not part of the community development block grant. That's
Right.
separate.
That's a
accounted for
separate,
separately,
okay.
Yes.
But it is for housing
Yeah, and you
Or-
guys, the board
Off-
has allocated that on certain projects as
as
they come
needed?
forward, and
Okay.
we pretty much tapped a significant portion of that
Just-
to help with the Reddick, some infrastructure on Reddick, correct?
Okay.
Is that-
Well, the Roundup is the separate one,
Mhm.
doesn't have a lot of money,
That's what I'm saying, it's not a
Yes.
big pot.
However, as John and I are going out and educating the community, we hand out those Roundup sheets everywhere we can go and just get people to sign up, because like I said, it's a matter of $12 a year is the max.
Right,
So
But-
that's still going into a fund,
that will do what?
offset the cost of the water tap.
Good, excellent,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you. If you would like I said, this report was a snapshot for the CDBG funds, but
Okay.
we'll add that as a note to
Yeah.
give you an update on that in the future also if you want.
Alderman Barnett.
Sitting here, just trying to separate a couple of things. You've got this, we've got a item on the agenda tonight for, I guess it's $400-something thousand from the Franklin Housing
Yes,
Authority.
sir.
We probably will eventually have something, if we do something on the Hill, from either one of the other three organizations eventually. Is any of that money there can be used for those particular?
They can be, and they have been in the past. So we assisted with infrastructure, both with Mount Hope Hard Bargain projects, with Reddick. That, one of the elements of what's before you tonight for Franklin Housing Authority is a commitment to program some future CDBG funds towards some infrastructure on that project as well. So those are eligible. They fit that low and moderate income benefit, which is what community development block grants are generally targeted towards. So that is absolutely something you'll be looking at in future program years, I would think, as you look at those projects and others like them.
Because the terminology used, if I read it right for tonight, would be, we were gonna take money out of the general fund to go in and replace, or whatever it was, on the amount being requested for the Franklin Housing Authority. And I may have kind of skewed that a little bit.
Well,
But-
they've got three different things they're asking you for.
Right.
And so one is some commitment of future CDBG funds. One is this payment in lieu of taxes status for additional units, which is it ties to a per unit cost, which is similar to what's allocated in other existing housing authority units. And then finally, they want to offset some impact fees related to parkland dedication and to road impact fees. So we're saying we need to keep those funds whole. We're recommending that the board allocate money from some other source for those impact fees. So you've really already tapped the CDBG for some infrastructure costs, and we're looking at that being a likely source, if you choose to, from some general fund source. I don't know that we could target CDBG funds into our impact fee funds. We need to have, I think, a specific end product at the end that we can point to in a project to the grantor, the federal government in that instance. So I don't think we can use it to replenish or replace an impact fee fund.
Pay them in lieu of.
I don't believe you can do that.
Okay. I mean,
I
that
think
that
they're
was-
gonna wanna see
that-
something.
That was their.
Yeah, they're gonna wanna see something
That was the
concrete for this.
roundabout way of
Yeah.
asking
Yeah,
that I asked.
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Just
Because-
don't think we can do that
Because
and stay
we're being
true to
asked,
the
we're being,
requirements.
we're being asked to roundabout fund this and a roundabout fund that and a roundabout fund something else. We've got this. We're being asked to pull money from a parkland dedication fee and not pay that. I mean, I like the word offset, but offset just means you're not gonna pay it. And we're gonna come back in and put money into the account, in the general fund, into that account then, to, I guess offset would be a good
an offset,
term
yeah.
there.
Correct.
Of course, it's not, so I'm just looking at how much money we're talking about and what all we're getting into and what all we're getting involved in. Because we have 3 or 4 different organizations that are asking for, pretty much similar to the same, if not the same, and it may be, that they're looking at workforce housing or and affordable housing more for the Franklin Housing Authority, workforce housing more for the others. But, yeah, you've cleared up enough for me to go
And-
forward for the next few minutes.
And you'll note that resolution for that last portion, for the offset of the impact fees, is a fill in the blank. It is not an all or nothing.
Right.
The board can allocate whatever you think is appropriate or you'd like to out of that for an offset of those specific fees. So that's something for you to look at, and that's why we wrote it that way, so that you know you can choose what you think is appropriate. Anywhere 0 to the requested amount, 470+ thousand.
I'll wait until we get to that.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Unless we want to go to that
No,
item,
I'm,
we let you think about it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Just
Okay.
rephrase again, we got how much CBG this 18, how much are we getting for 19?
319.
So it went up.
It went up. And
From
it
the
was
federal
really
government.
Great that it went up because I'd already finished the plan, so I had to hurry up and rewrite it in, which is wonderful. It went up about $40,000.
So that makes me nervous for next year. No.
Makes me excited.
Okay,
You
we'll
never
move
know.
on to item 2, which is discussion
Thank you.
regarding the development of a name and distinctive brand identity for the Southeast Municipal Complex property.
So Lisa will come forward and walk through this with you. We've been working on some ideas on how we want to, as we say, brand and talk about the Southeast Park development and that municipal services complex in that area. And I'll let Lisa and Mark take it away.
Thank you. Good evening. I think just some background. We've had so many people involved in our community that's following the Southeast Municipal Complex project. We've had core committees, we've had a lot of public forums, and I've had quite a few interactions with residents in this area. So if I could take just 5 minutes to kind of give a little bit of background and then why the naming and the branding is so important, I'd like to do that if I may. So when we originally, in 2015, within the Parks Master Plan, we identified in that master plan that we needed a new sports complex around 50 acres. That was very important as part of that plan. And we even identified that a budget of around $13 million should be allocated toward that. As the master plan and toward the end, we were approached by the idea with the city that because we were looking in the southeast quadrant of the city to build such a park, it was important to understand that in 2008, the city had purchased 180 acres for a future wastewater treatment plant. And as the Parks Department, we were asked, would you consider, could we utilize, even though the plant wouldn't utilize the entire property, but could you utilize it for this new park? We were very gracious to say yes, of course. And it kind of brings us back to where we are today. However, in 2017, in December of 2017, you all allocated funds to purchase the Lockwood property, which is right across the river. So that's another 53 acres. So we're talking about, when we master planned from just overall park standpoint, 233 acres. That's important to recognize that this project overall, considering it one parcel of land when you consider both of them together, is larger than Harlansdale. Harlansdale's 199. And when we talked about doing a complex of around 50 acres, Jim Warren Park is your kind of your go-to. It's 58 acres. So it's important to kind of understand the scale and size of why we're doing and why we'll be coming and doing this park in phases. The naming and the branding is important because we will do it in phases, but it's also important that we also call it something from the very beginning. Southeast Municipal Complex came about because it's not just about parks, but it's also about wastewater and water management overall. And how does all of that be included when you're talking about the development of a park? And so in saying all of that is we have, we worked with Tollison and McCoy, sub-consultants to look at naming the park. We derived about 50, there's probably about 20 different staff members from planning, engineering, stormwater, communications, parks, building neighborhood services. We were all involved in looking at what did that property from the southeast and Lockwood property, what took place there, why was it there, how was it used, and what was the history. It's important to share that we did not find anything historically significant. In our line of work of having all of our historical parks, we do not believe the battle came across the property at this moment, but we do know that it was farmed. And Robertson Lake was named after the Robertson family who actually built the lake, and that was important to know. And so as it was many years ago and as it still is today, it's still being farmed. And so it's really a blank canvas of now what to call it. And how do you take a look at a name that can withstand years upon years, but you're also not just looking at a park name. You're looking at how you're going to use it on hats and T-shirts and branding it for visitors and tournaments and all of those things, but also for our citizens. And that's very important. Vicki, if you'll go to the next slide. So what you're going to see before you tonight is through this staff committee, Tollison took us through an exercise. Tollison McCoy is the sub-consultants I shared just a few minutes ago. That basically to identify not only of what the park, but how would you use it in the rooms of the park. And that was important. So we've come before you tonight with two suggestions of names. Is you're going to see different logos, and you're going to see the names within those logos, the same logos. You're going to see River Run, and you're going to see Franklin South. And with that, what was important to share with you as overall is the tagline that you'll see in the second River Run on the screen: conserve, connect, and compete. That was real important. The conservation of this property and how the river runs through it. It also with trail systems, with the lake, with the floodplain and the floodway that's there, and the wetlands that will be constructed. That's important that from a conservation effort, there's educational efforts that will take place from both water management and parks in our community and school groups, but it's also about connecting the community. It's about connecting neighbors. It's about connecting sports teams together. It's about connecting different uses that we may not even have in our community, such as an inclusive playground with other children or adults with, that do not have disabilities. And it's also compete. Competing is very important because that was the need that initially started out of the master plan. So if you'll go to the next slide, Vicki, please.
And you'll notice these are all going to be in black and white. That's because that's the best way to start with a logo and look at it. We will look to add color when we refine some of the ones that you like better, but you add color in early, sometimes it may skew you towards one choice over another just because of the colors that were chosen. So that's intentional that you're seeing everything tonight in black and white, and that'll help us refine this going forward.
And Eric stated that that's a perfect way, as the consultant said early on with this group that we kind of brought together, is if the name will stand alone, it'll stand in black and white. And how would you hashtag it? How will you use it in your social media and on Facebook and all those different things? So the next one is Franklin South, and you can see kind of how Franklin South is more of directional. It's where you are. We do not have a park within our park system named after Franklin, but it's also directional that it is south. Next, please. And then it's about, I talked about rooms. So you have Robertson Lake, you'll have the river, you'll have the river walk, you'll have inclusive playground, you'll have pickleball or splash grounds, and you'll also have ball fields. So within this, you will have to where on this particular side, even if we were to incorporate both the names, River Run, which might be the trail system or so, at Franklin South, which has the compass within the O of the South. And still have your tagline, conserve, connect, compete. You also have optional brand elements to where, depending on where you are in the park, this not only allows you to kind of identify where it is, but it also crosses language barriers. And that's real important within our community because we serve quite a few different groups within our community from a recreational standpoint. Next slide, please. It's also important from the water management standpoint. If we name the park, then any facility that's within that park will be named that. So how do you bring that out? So there's all types of, again, this is a compass. You have Franklin South. You also have River Run. It can be utilized, but you see the water droplets from wetlands to the river to Robertson Lake and the interpretation. So the optional branding elements are within that. And then finally, you also have to where even just some signage that kind of dictate from the canoeing and the running and cycling. The park has something for everyone. And so we bring before you tonight, again, with a blank canvas that you have in 233 acres, it's about naming one park, but there can be names within it. But there needs to be something that you can get excited about. We're excited to be able to bring you these two names. But in August, the goal is to be able to bring back a resolution to you so that I'll leave that blank until I hear from you. But we'd love some direction and maybe even conversation that you might have with your constituents.
Alderman Peterson.
You know, it seemed to me, especially as we got to the end,
Speak in
like
the
the,
microphone a little
okay, it seemed to me all the way through, but certainly as we got to the end, these are all adults. And actually, I consider this to be an extremely important part of the complex that you started off with. And so I really feel that we need to indicate it's, and we have done this so many times on when we're talking about trails to walk on and everything, those would really be more adult activities. And I certainly know that the plans for this include a great deal involving children.
Yes,
and now you've talked about that. So I'd like to think about making that one of the key parts to this. I noticed they had a football or something like that over here. To tell you the truth, I couldn't tell what some of these other things were. But I'm just saying, though, I really felt like we need to say this will at least be half involving non-adults, most certainly, because we're expecting to have a lot of good things out there.
Absolutely, some good feedback.
And so just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay.
Other comments? Alderman Bland.
Well, my voice is going, so I'm gonna have to be extra loud. I love the tag, the 3 C's. I think that's strong. And just looking at this the last couple of days, I'm at first blush, I wasn't real excited. Sorry. To me, River Run makes it sound like it's a competition, like a 5K. I also think that the graphics are a little bit, and I should probably say this in private, but are a little bit dated. The whole sunburst is very dated. That came out probably about 10 years ago as a strong graphic. Sorry about my voice. And Franklin South to me is generic in that it's a direction. And I know there's no historical value out there, but if you think about all of our other parks, there's typically a name adjoined to them, because we do hang our hat so much on being a sense of place with Franklin. And a lot of times that's historic, but if you look at Jim Warren Park, if you look at Pinkerton Park, they're not generic names to the public. It doesn't mean anything, but to us, it means something for people who've been around here. So I don't know if you could possibly carry on the Carruthers when you think about the C being a strong emphasis with Carruthers, and that's that area. And then you think about the Connect and the Conserve and Compete. To me, that's it's a nice marriage.
We agree.
Again, this could grow on me, and I'm one amongst 8 with a really crappy voice. I think the compass is a great thing to bring into play, but as a logo, and I've looked at a lot of logos in my day, I feel like we can do better. So, sorry.
No, I appreciate the feedback.
That's why we're here.
As honest as I can be.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
I think it takes us down a direction we've never been. I mean, everything we name here, there's a reason for it. And to me, this is just grasping at generic straws.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Alderman Martin.
Personally, I like to keep it simple, and I think that River Run with the second one in the circle, there is a river there. You don't have to hunt for it. It's right there. I think River Run, the name River Run would become a name in itself, and I don't think people would stop to say, now, what does that mean? I mean, there's the river, and the river's out there. So, to me, that's simple, and I just think that's easy to say, and I can see little children say to their mother, let's go to River Run today and play in the park. I don't think you have to say everything about it. I think it'll just become its own entity.
It will, kind of like Pinkerton.
Yeah. What does that mean? You know, nobody knows what that means. And-
Sure we do.
Well, some of us do, but not everybody.
That just makes, one to add on to that, actually, whenever you said Robinson Lake, there are a lot of us who have been around a long time who knew the Robinson family and thought very highly of them, although I don't think it would be appropriate to add on to this, but they were certainly a wonderful family. In fact, just saw one of them at my husband's college reunion last year, you know. But as I say, in the church, they were absolutely outstanding.
When we've talked about the pavilion that is envisioned for on the lake being named for the Robinson family.
Oh, I think that would be very good.
That sort
I
of
think that
fits
would be
with the
very
lake there, and so that's also something we've got in the works.
Alderman Bransford.
I agree with the logo, maybe articulating youth, children, maybe youth is more generic perhaps. And also keeping it simple, because I think there would be opportunities that individual little sites within this complex, we can give some unique names. You know, like you mentioned pavilion or whatever. But for the overall complex, as you've been articulating, I'm not opposed. I kind of like the combination ones, like River Run at South, at Franklin South. I mean, that's a lot of maybe words or whatever. Yes, and to compete and connect and conserve. I'm not, you know, children, you may not want to put a 4th C there, but anyway, if you can capture the youth in there some kind of way, or you may want to put another C and add children, or something like that.
Okay.
But, you know, I can kind of go with the majority. I'm not, you know, I just wanted to be simple and easy. The logo gonna be with us forever, and I want it to be good, yes.
Till we rebrand it.
Yeah.
Until it's not.
Yeah.
Alderman Berger, or did I have you, Alderman Lee?
Well, I haven't heard the majority yet.
Well, no, I'm saying, well, whenever that comes,
and-
whenever that comes.
Yeah, and I think that whenever you are directing somebody to go to the River Run at Franklin South, Conserve, Connect, Compete Park, they ain't gonna, they gonna shorten that to begin with.
Or-
You don't go play ball you go play ball at Jim Warren. I mean, we know where Jim Warren is. I think I think Franklin South, on any of those, roll up one screen on any of those is certainly appropriate for my way of thinking. And I think I really think the shorter you make it, the better you are. You can put the other little compete and conserve and contact and connect and whatever else it is on there if you want to. But I really like any of those three right there, so.
And that might be something even within wayfinding or something as you go into the park, as
You
those
can-
taglines
Yeah.
could be. Good feedback.
Alderman Berger?
This is stuff I work on all the time, so it's in my wheelhouse. So I look at that, I agree with Brandy. I would not, the sunburst is really outdated. I don't really care for that because of just because of the dated look, but at the same time, it can still be used in some way. Honestly, I don't really mind that so much. The other thing about, I never thought adults or kids, I just thought people. I didn't necessarily see that the kids were excluded here at all, but, you know, looks like kids to me. But anyway, I don't think that you, I don't, you know, kids, it looks like a kid running there to me. But, I don't think you want to break the cardinal rule and put a fourth C. That would, to me, be absolutely no. Keep your 3. And then with Clyde's points, absolutely, you got to keep it really simple. And I actually like the direction. I think the larger this community's been growing quite a bit. I think saying something about Franklin South is good. And I actually like the Take Run River Run because to me it indicates athleticism, not only, doesn't say, you know, it's a run to me, but it says activity, you know, fun, place to go, and also river run, that there's a river there, and rivers run. They run deep, they run fast, they run swift. There's just a lot of connotations you can use with river and run. I would try to keep it very simple. The more you get busy here, the harder it's going to be to use your logo, you know that. I really don't like the last one at all, the second to last one, the raindrop things. How would you use that? Would you use that in a different, along with the branding, or would you, is that a choice?
I think that's a choice
Okay.
that you could have, and it could be that depending on where you are, if it's
Yeah.
for the wetlands, if you're doing interpretive signage for the stormwater, or even for the reclamation plant, you could use.
Yeah, I think you don't want to confuse your brand.
Yeah.
So if you use that in any way, you could use it very nondescriptly in some areas, but I wouldn't get away from the brand. And whatever the brand ends up being, you know, be careful how you use that. It's very, that one's very limiting. You'd have to use that very limiting. The other thing is the Carruthers. I personally, when you're looking at professionally, I would say, and not whether I like it or not, just professionally, I would say that Carruthers, using anything in the name Carruthers in there, I would not advise it if I was sitting here with a client, because you have too many. Carruthers is not a specific area. It's a very long road, and it goes from up in Cool Springs all the way down to Ladd Park. So it's can be very confusing using Carruthers, because we already have Carruthers Boulevard, we have Carruthers Parkway, then we have Carruthers down in the Ladd Park in the South Carruthers area. So you could probably get, we already have problems now, people going, where in Carruthers? Carruthers Parkway, Carruthers Boulevard, where? The new Carruthers? So people are always, you know, saying, we're on Carruthers, because it is a very long road. So I would,
like Old Hickory Boulevard.
yeah, that's right.
Keep
That's
running
right.
into it.
Where are you?
It's amazing.
I call it, I say, oh, I'm only 8 miles away. So I always just stay away from that one.
Okay.
Because I don't think that goes. But other than that, I had a couple little things. The fonts I really liked, except I would also give you a couple of these fonts. I
Please.
wrote out a few.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
think that there's some that you might want to look at to just make sure that the branding of the fonts at the top, like if you have River Run and you have South, I like them. I mean, I'm not saying I don't, but I think especially for this one, there might be something you could do for River Run a little bit different.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Alderman Barnhill, you got another comment?
Yeah. Put it up to corporate sponsorship and have them name it after the corporation, and they make
Oh, of course,
and
I
they
would
make
say
a,
that.
a monetary contribution annually. And as
we've-
long as they make that contribution
Are they doing that?
annually,
We
that
talked
name
about that.
stays up there then, so.
We talked about that.
We
before.
talked about that would be part in the master plan, that there ought to be opportunities like that. You still may want to name specific areas.
Yeah, I don't-
And you still need a name.
The main
Overall brand.
Nissan it, there's just Nissan Field or LP Field, or,
Yeah.
we still need something so that it's directional for tournament play or
Yeah.
just the park itself.
Yeah.
We haven't quite hit
And I
on
would
that, but
anticipate a great deal of tournament play out there.
yes.
A good
Oh,
question. How many, remind me, how many fields are for the turn, for,
We have 10 fields
Right.
designed, and so you would have at least 5 for football, and they're looking at 5 for lacrosse, but then they could also be utilized. They're still the same size to where then rugby or flag football or whatever type of tournament Mike could bring in.
and so that really is a big part of it. And-
Absolutely.
And that's,
And that is, again, that's the reason I shared that background information. That's your need. That should be the first phase that walks through the door regarding your infrastructure. But having that name and how we brand that on the front end is just very important to get that started from your standpoint.
Isn't it obvious we should call it South Park?
We did talk about that in private, but thank you for bringing it out.
Give it to Felicia. I think it's something from Bill.
I mean, I can't play any part in missing that opportunity. If you
It was
choose
just
to
sitting
name it
there, wasn't it?
something else, you'll do it over my vote.
So we're not gonna get a unanimous vote here.
Not unless we call it South Park.
South Park, oh, there. I don't know about that. I think
Well,
somebody has that branding.
I was just
You know,
gonna go ahead.
I'm not 100% happy with the logos. I do like the element of the river running through it, and I do like the 3 Cs. I think those are good. I'm not particularly enamored by the sunburst or whatever that is. As far as I think River Run is kind of catchy myself.
I do too.
Versus Franklin South. I think I'd be confused if I were somebody new coming to the area and they said, well, we're playing ball at Franklin South.
Well, where?
Might be a little puzzle. I mean, that would take a while, but River Run, I think would work a little better.
Okay.
The river runs all the way through.
Sound like a movie to me.
the river runs through.
Yeah, the
Get
river
Brad
runs.
Pitt
River
here.
Run will come out of the mouth of a child better than Franklin South.
That's right.
No child
Very
is
good
going to
teacher.
say, let's go to Franklin South to play on the playground. But River Run,
Yeah.
that'll just come right out of their mouths. And that last thing you showed, the one with the circles, I really didn't get what that is. That looks like knobs on a machine to me. I
Looks
don't know
like a
what it.
thermostat
it's
setting.
This is a rough
Kissing
bunch
around.
tonight.
I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't, whatever it is, I don't think I would choose that. And
I agree
I'm
now.
thinking of children, when we think of
speed
this, I want something that a
It's a
child
stone knob.
can draw in a classroom. You want it to be so familiar and so easy for them that they will just gravitate to it, either by speaking about it or drawing it, because we do a lot of that in school.
We need to move on.
Could I say one thing? Maybe,
Quick,
maybe one of
please.
the little the things at the very end has, a child at bat or something. I
That's a
mean,
good idea.
just something that shows, because as I say, to me,
Kicking a soccer ball.
children are not biking for, I mean, for an activity out there. They would do that around where they live, and
You
everything.
got some input, don't you?
Yeah,
But
instead
I-
of,
I
do. Thank you.
instead of
Just
sunburst, think about some
something,
trees and some
All right,
landscaping.
we need to move on. We got a lot to cover.
Yes,
Number
we do.
3 is
Yes, we do.
event permit for Franklin Classic for Mercy Community Healthcare. Any questions about that one? Then we'll go on to item 4, which is a resolution 2018-01 awarding the construction contract to Kiewit Infrastructure South Company in the amount of $132,380,000 with the addition of an alternative of a jet mixing system in the equalization basin in the amount of $510,000 for the water reclamation facility modifications and expansion project for a total recommended project amount of $132,890,000.
Do we win the award tonight?
No, you do.
I have got,
Longest title and the
Longest
most
title.
money.
that's a
for
really good
sure.
one.
And most money, sure.
This is obviously a huge project, one we've been talking about for several years, a key part of the Integrated Water Resource Plan. And so want to walk through some of those elements for you tonight and take any questions that you have. This is a rebid, as you all know. We bid this project earlier in the year, and this rebid has produced bids around $20 million less than what we saw earlier in the year. So that's a good thing. One of the other elements, as you look at this, we had costs that we had projected when we did the integrated plan, and when we were at the end of the plan, that had those costs at around $108 to $110 million. That was a 2015 cost. So just to give that a little context, if we take a pretty conservative construction inflation number of 5% a year, and the numbers I saw recently are closer to 6%, and that's a generic national number. It doesn't take into account how hot the Middle Tennessee and Franklin, Nashville market is. That gets you up to around $127–128 million. So this 133 million with the add-on item component is really not out of line with what we would have expected based on what we projected initially 3 years ago or so. So that just gives you a little context there. As you know, the financing component is an important piece. We've secured a $100 million loan at less than 2% for a 30-year term from the State Revolving Loan Fund. That is an excellent start here. We had anticipated and have available to us cash on hand, which is comprised of collected impact fees and some of the fund balance within our water management, our sewer, sanitary sewer fund, somewhere in the range of $20 to $25 million as a conservative planning number that can help us with the cost of the project. And then we also have the option to look at other additional debt funding capacity, be that through additional dollars in the State Revolving Loan Fund, or we do have the option of looking at revenue bonds similar to what we did with the water treatment plant that recently completed. So we've got a path forward. The good news is with $100 million of a loan, we don't have to secure that final piece of financing immediately. We can look at what our options are, work with the revolving loan fund to see if capacity comes available. And so that would be an important component I would add to the discussion as we think about this. So I know Michelle and Mark have some things to touch on as we go through it, and I'll let them take you through that, and then we'll be glad to take any comments from there and questions.
So I'll get us started, and Mark can chime in, of course. So as you know, this project started when we initiated the IWRP in 2009. This was one of the recommended projects to upgrade the capacity of our existing wastewater plant. The new construction obviously is anticipating more stringent permit limits. And then in addition to that, simultaneously constructing a new biosolids treatment train to treat to some of the criteria that were developed from the stakeholder group in the IWRP. And I have those listed here, but I'm not gonna read those. So next one. So we'll kind of jump into, that was a little bit of background, we'll kind of jump into current operations. So the proposed upgrades, and we've talked about these a couple of times, include a lot of different things that's going to make us a better functioning facility. But the most important of those is the addition of phosphorus removal capacity. So we're doing some modifications to the aeration basins to have the ability of doing both biological and chemical phosphorus removal. We're also doing some upgrades to the reclaimed water pump station. So those are adding some new pumps and some new capacities there. We're also upgrading our facility-wide odor control. So much of the processes will be odor controlled with much newer equipment that's not reaching its 20-year lifespan, that has better efficiencies and better operating conditions. So those are for the liquid side, and then for the solid side, we're essentially constructing a new treatment train. So of those, you've heard about the thermal hydrolysis process that we're going to be installing as well. And that's going to allow us to treat to a Class A exceptional quality solid. So that the most important thing with that is that it gives us an array of additional disposal options that allows us. Right now, we're currently trucking to a landfill. And this will, giving us this higher class solids, will let us use it for fertilizer or other options. So in the solids process as well, we're also upgrading the odor control on those facilities, the digesters and the new solids building too. So just as an important note that I wanted to point out is that solar dryers are not included on this project. They have been removed from the bid package. They were removed from the specs. They've not been bid on. So I wanted to point that out. Let's see. Another important aspect that I wanted to mention was we're going to be installing a combined heat and power engine, which will take some of the gas from the digester. So from the new digesters, we're constructing the biogas, and we'll convert that into electricity. And we have that will be put back into the plant to help offset some of those electricity costs. So we'll be producing some green energy, and then as the capacity gets larger, the more energy that we'll end up producing. So we'll go to the next slide. So bids were open June 18th in the boardroom. We had 4 contractors that submitted bids. The lowest bid was Kiewit Infrastructure with a total base bid of $132,380,000. So bids ranged from 132 to 148. So you can see they were significantly lower than the first, what Eric had mentioned, the first bid that we opened in January. So one of the things we did on this project was we had asked the contractor to price several additive and deductive alternates. And what this does is this allows us to receive pricing from the contractor on additional items that we may want to include, but it doesn't force us. It's not included in the base bid, so they're optional items. So of those several items, one of the things that that staff has looked at and would like to recommend to be included in the bid award is the additive alternate A, which is the addition of a jet mixing system in the equalization basin. So that is $510,000, and what that is, it's a system that will keep, when we do use the equalization basin, which is we'll be able to hold water for those really large storm events that we get. It will keep the water from settling, and so it'll help reduce odors, because with not having raw wastewater sit is always a good thing. But then it'll also help with some maintenance issues once we drain all the water out and treat that with cleaning the tank afterwards. Also important to note that the equalization tank is already odor controlled, so this is just kind of a belt and suspenders, an additional level of redundancy that we're looking to add. So the next slide. So the kind of go over the timeline of the project itself. So the total construction period is 42 months, which is 3.5 years. Some of the things that we've already talked about is the temporary access off of Matt Catcher. So there'll be a construction access, a right in, right out off of Matt Catcher, crossing the walking trail right there at the edge of the wastewater plant property. And another thing that's going to be really important for us is that we have to continue to maintain operations while we're doing the construction. So we can't just turn things off, for 3 years. So there's a significant amount of coordination that happens with the construction inspectors that we'll talk about in the next item, in addition to water management staff and the plant staff as well. So making sure that everything kind of operates smoothly during that time. So the next slide, I'll let Mark talk about. Yeah.
So I think, excuse me, Eric touched on some of this already. We're currently working with our cost of service consultant to see how this bid affects, if at all, our rates. We have, as Eric had mentioned, our bid in June was significantly less than what we had received in January, almost $20 million less. He did mention the state revolving fund interest rate at 1.47%. We, compared to the bond market, which is what we estimated our rate structure to be based on, is significantly less. We would expect about a $30 million difference.
About 3% less.
About
the interest rate.
correct. So another key thing to point out too is that we have established well, this is actually the second of 2 5-year rate plans. And when we first started stepping through that, the rate plan, we had talked about a slow incremental increase in rates versus a large stair-step rate increase. In doing so, we've been able to accumulate monies, as Eric had mentioned, to offset the costs as well. We're going to come back to you all here shortly. We actually have a meeting tomorrow with our cost of service consultant. We'll return to you with our findings from that study. Can we go to the, I got it right here.
I think we can say our general sense is that this is not going to have a significant impact on how we projected rates out, with the offset of projecting a 4.5% interest rate and now receiving on a lion's share of the funding, something 3% less than that. Some of the other elements, the conservatism that was built in on some other elements of that. We don't expect this to be significantly different than what we were projecting a couple years ago in terms of how that rate structure and that path going forward looks. We got to tie down specifics, but just to give you a sense of what our review has revealed to this point and what we're hearing is that it's going to be pretty consistent with how we had projected this previously.
Yes, thank you. So we received the bids on June 15th. There's a 90-day life cycle on the bids. We had scrambled pretty hard to get in front of you all the last board work session, and then the CIC, I think we ran into some trouble there as well. But wanted to talk about the timeline just so you're aware. Again, it's a 90-day turnaround in terms of the life of the bid. After the board, this body approves or disapproves, for that matter, this bid, we would have to go back to the state revolving fund in order for them to approve as well. We expect that to be less than 30 to 45 days, but I guess the point of this slide is this time is of the essence, and we wanted to make sure that that's clear to everybody. So again, we need to provide a notice to proceed within 90 days total. Is that fair to say?
Well, so the notice to proceed, so what that is we've given the contractor a timeline of 90 days after they've received bid award is that they have to mobilize. So they can, wait to mobilize in January to make sure they've got all their ducks in a row. They've got to get going within 90 days.
So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion. And
Alderman Berger.
I've sort of talked to you all about this, so I don't have any big questions here, but I was very curious about this company. So I did some research. Amazing company. Congratulations.
Kiewit.
Kiewit. Congratulations. Great company. I was just blown away at how they are ranked. Just to let everybody know, if you don't, in this engineering scoreboard or score book that they have, they rank them as #1 contractor for dams, reservoirs, and water supply, wastewater. Number two for water treatment and wastewater. Number 3 for water transmission lines, and 4 for sanitary and storm sewers. And over 10 years provided procurement, constructions, startups for services for over 400 water and wastewater projects totaling $6.5 billion in contract revenue. That's amazing. They've done a number of projects in Arizona. I actually made a call to find out about one of them because I had somebody in that venue, in that arena. And they knew very well of them and said they're like the top-notch country or company for this kind of thing. So I just wanted to share that because I'm always curious when we go to these contracts, how these people perform.
Sure.
I
So I think
appreciate you
we're-
doing the research. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. They were actually part of an expedited bridge construction project up in Nashville a couple of years ago as well. So their reputation is they come in and do the work and move on. So.
Yeah, and they were the top contractors in delivery of water and wastewater projects throughout the United States. So I felt really good about that after knowing that. And there's a couple other questions I had, but I've already got those answered, so I'm good.
Thank you.
Alderman Peterson.
I also was interested in the company, and have they ever done thermal hydrolysis before?
They've been working.
They, I don't know that answer, but I can
Yeah.
certainly, I can
I
certainly
did
check
not
into it.
see
got
it just
some of
in,
that right here.
in looking, and of course, I'm assuming they had not been connected at all with the
Yep.
Blue Plains and the Trinity River that are in.
Not that I'm aware of, but we'll certainly check into that.
Yeah.
But as I say, thermal hydrolysis is something really new to the U.S.,
Mhm.
period.
It is,
And,
yeah.
Well, I think one of the things about the thermal hydrolysis process is that it comes in on a skid. So all of the different elements of that process are already built by the manufacturer in their facility. It's delivered on a skid. I'm oversimplifying here, but they hook up to the inlet side and hook up to the outlet side. That's certainly an oversimplification, but they're not building the individual processes on the skid itself. So just wanted to point that out. But yes,
But as I say,
I understand. and
with,
we'll look.
and you know, some of you went to Europe to look at some of this. I take it they also haven't done anything in Europe.
I'd have to check into that one as well, so.
Well, this,
Yeah, that's
so this is Kiewit Southern, so I would imagine there's different aspects of Kiewit, different
Well, it said
parts of
they're
the
based
company.
in Nebraska, though, I thought, but
Yeah,
maybe I'm
yeah.
wrong about that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can't
they
hear
are.
you, Alderman Peterson.
I said, I think they were, headquarters were in Nebraska. Corporate
They are.
headquarters.
Yeah, I think that's another part, so Kiewit Southern, Kiewit, yeah.
The one you're working with, is that Dallas? Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so
They've
they,
got majors, yeah.
they might or might not have anything to do with the Trinity River that's being, constructed right now.
Yeah,
That would
we'll
be
check- we'll
interesting
check
to
on
find
that.
out, because they're also using this,
Thermal hydrolysis.
unusual or different, I'll put it that way.
Sure.
Alderman Bransby.
Just clarification, did I hear you say that the solar dryer was removed? Solar?
Yes.
Is it because of thermal? Why?
We removed that at the board's direction
Okay,
about a year
because-
ago,
I'm not happy
because
about
that
it.
was just not
What
something you wanted
part
to
of
add
it
to the
was-
process, and some concerns from the neighborhood.
So what would we have instead?
You're gonna have, you're gonna produce a biosolid at a
That is-
certain
Yeah.
dryness
So-
level.
It's
So
still gonna be
the
Class
solar
A,
dryers
right?
just
Yes.
really were, for an additional volume reduction.
All right.
But, so we're gonna be,
Skip that phase.
treating the solids to a Class A right now, so it's really just how dry we want them, is
But
what
you're
the solar
gonna
dryers
be
would
wet.
accomplish.
It's gonna be wet. We're gonna have to do something with the liquid.
It's not gonna be, it's probably gonna be about 30 to 40% solids,
Like
so
mud?
it's a little bit more cakey than mud.
And what will we do with it?
There's a number of options we can look at. It's, Eric had mentioned earlier that it's a Class A exceptional quality product, which means that what we can do with it is largely unlimited. We can have residents use it, we can use it in our operations.
what?
We can have residents use it in their, gardens, we can use it in our operations, in the Parks Department, you know.
So we can use it.
We can use it as
Yep.
well. We've talked a number of times with a biosolids broker to look at other options that they may have for us, but that's an ongoing discussion. So, you know, we're still working through that process.
Ready to move on?
This on for voting tonight.
Item 5 is, I'm sorry, I have one public comment. Dory Bowles, give you 2 minutes.
Actually, I probably only need one.
got
No,
one
no
minute.
worries.
You just got your request.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure you're all thrilled that you're at this point. I just wanted to come here tonight and just say congratulations. I'm glad to see that the plant is moving forward. It's going to be able to reduce a lot of the phosphorus. We don't know how much, obviously. We're in the middle of a science project that everybody's working on. So that'll be great to get that going. And the only thing I really wanted to raise as a result is that back in April, when you all were wrestling with having to, drop the bids and rebid and all that, Eric made a statement at the BOMA meeting about the city was going to be committed to not adding any more loads in the river as you expand with the sewer plant, which is awesome. That's the position that we've been taking. So it sounds like we have fundamental agreement, and so I'd love to work with you on how to put that in some form, and then we can resolve some of the things that are still sitting on the table. So sounds good. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Item 5, professional services agreement with CDM Smith Incorporated for construction, administration, and inspection services, water reclamation facility upgrades project, the amount of $11,677,396.
Related to this large project we just talked about is a significant oversight in terms of how you implement it, the complexity of the project. And so this is something that Michelle and Mark have worked very closely in negotiating. It's a little less than a 9% compared to the project itself. It is a significant cost, but a cost we've carried from the beginning because we knew this would be necessary to implement a project of this size and scale. So I'll let Michelle kind of walk through the specifics of what it entails, but obviously a big price tag, but an important component to implementing this very complex, very significant investment appropriately and effectively.
So in the memo, it talks about this RPR inspection proposal covers the entire length of the project. So it will start from doing the SRF administration all the way to the record drawings and the creation of as-builts and stuff that we keep on file that we reference for maintenance. The proposal is divided into 4 sections. There's a table in the memo, but the first general services section, that kind of covers some of the project management, some of the review of submittals. So every piece of equipment, every methodology that the contractor uses is reviewed prior to it being done. So that's accounting for CDM to review those. There is requests for information if the contractor doesn't understand something or if they need to look at old drawings. It's documented appropriately. There's time for CDM to review that in there. There's a substantial or a certain number of site visits that's included as well for some of the design engineers to come up and visit. The next part, the resident project engineering services, that's the bulk of this, the inspection. So we anticipate up to 5 RPRs, our resident project engineers, on the site at one time, which is, we anticipate that the timing of the project and some of the construction sequence to overlap some of those. But there's essentially two independent projects going on. There's a liquids train and then the solids train, and we need to make sure that we have adequate oversight for both of those to make sure that the product that we're getting, meets the specifications that we've defined. They'll also be, the RPRs will be responsible for documentation of conditions. They'll have, daily reports that they fill out. There'll be photographic evidence of everything that's done that we'll keep track of and record of. The third part of kind of the construction project is the construction special services is what it's called. And this is really the administration of the SRF loan. So as part of the compliance with the Davis-Bacon wage rates and the American Iron and Steel requirements, we have to conduct interviews with some of the staff. We have to do certain documentation for SRF to make sure that we get reimbursed appropriately. So this includes that part of it. And this also includes the commissioning services. So once we, get to that point where we're starting to commission equipment to get it up and running and into service, this would be the oversight for that and the appropriate testing that has to go for that. The last part, the operation and maintenance services. So this was something that we added. So right now, the wastewater plant doesn't use our computerized management system Infor to track any of the maintenance requests, and I'd like for us to start doing that. So this is having someone from CDM Smith to come and collaborate with our IT department to see what would need it to be done, additional modules, or how to kind of set up the integration for that to happen. Let's see, is there anything? Brian and I, so Brian, the assistant director, and I have reviewed this pretty extensively and have worked with CDM to reduce some of the cost and to kind of make sure that we were, fully understanding and everything we thought in this proposal was fully appropriate. And so we recommend this to the board, and this is not on the voting session tonight, so this is on the voting in August.
Alderman Martin.
Is this 11.6 million in addition to the 133 million?
Yes, so this
Good
is,
Lord.
this is for CDM Smith.
So we talked
How mu-
about the cost of service analysis in the previous item. These numbers are also being, they're also plugged into the cost of service as well to make sure that we're capturing the cost fully, so.
And that percentage of the project total is well within normal range of what we pay on, I say construction management, that may not be the proper term, but it's well within the normal range.
Yeah, this of course is I think arguably the largest single project the city's done. And
It's larger than the next 3 to 5 combined.
Yeah.
um, the, ensuring that the work, ensuring the work is done according to spec, there's appropriate oversight, is imperative for the success. You add the element of coordinating an ongoing operation at the water reclamation facility to ensure we meet permit standards as an added complexity to this, and of course drives costs as well. So as Michelle had mentioned, we've gone back and forth with consultant and feel that, that we are presenting a product or presenting a scope of services to you that is appropriate for this type of work.
Alderman Bransford, then Alderman
So
Barnhill.
with maybe changes, this number could perhaps go up if there's any kind of, if this CDM run across any changes that we see is necessary on the job,
I think
in the midst of the job,
I think
amendments.
I think you run
So
that
we
risk
could-
in any job.
We could see this 11 million grow to,
Well, the type of contract we're looking at is a time and materials contract, so it's an upper limit. So it can go either way. It's not a lump sum in which we'll spend $11.6 million, absolutely. But as with any project, there may be
so you
site
can't sit here
circumstances.
before me and say that, Ms. Pearl, this is the top
I
number.
can't say
We
that.
can't say that too on any contract.
With any
I know.
project.
Honestly.
I'm being a
let me
little
just mention on
facetious.
this.
Yeah.
It provides for about 42 and a half months.
Yeah.
So it's a very extensive, both pre, during
based on
construction and post-construction, so that we are able to both get it built, but also bring it online and make sure our operators know how to make everything go. So,
And that percentage, many times, is up to 12% of the project cost, if I remember correctly.
yeah, you could,
So this is,
Michelle and
Well, we just need to be ready for the sticker shock, and I think that's what, yeah.
One of the things, this is a 3.5 years what's planned here. I will tell you, Kiewit thinks they may be able to deliver this faster than that. So if they do, then that reduces the time that you've got these types of services in
They
place.
always show a little leg before we issue the notice to proceed. I
Well-
mean, come on. None of us are falling for that anymore.
We don't, well, that's something they told us.
Hillsborough Road,
Well,
just stop, okay? They always tell us
Yeah.
they can bring it in. And then we start getting change orders and weather delays and yada, yada, yada. And the next thing you know, they're suing you before they've even finished painting. So I don't really want to hear, I don't want to be tickled like that anymore. Just do it. If you, don't even tell me you can do it. Just do it. I'm tired of hearing about.
I understand.
I'm
Thank
tired
you.
of hearing about projects coming in early.
understood.
One, just just one final comment, or from me. For $140-something million, we're getting 5 or 6 million gallons of additional capacity. How long does that last us? What do we anticipate that going to with the rate of growth that we're having? We know that we're treating all of the sewage. We're not necessarily doing the water, so ignore water. Where does that get us to? Does it get us to 2030? Does it get us to 2028? Where do you anticipate this improvement in that project out there for $145 million? What year does it get us to?
I don't know that we can definitively answer
Okay.
that, because so much depends on the nature of development, how much of your urban growth boundary actually comes into the city and develops, and how it develops, the density at which it develops. It is a 33% increase over the capacity we have
Right.
today. So that's a significant, when you look at the footprint of the city now, you're increasing that capacity. We're treating around 9 to 10 million gallons a day on average, something like that now, with the footprint of what we have today. So if you extrapolate that out 30%, does that give you a sense of this handles a city of a population of, I would say, well over 100,000, 100 to 110,000, depending on the mix and the commercial development. So it may be more accurate to think about the size and scope of the city than to pick a year.
I'll do either one.
Yeah, so
Because we've got numbers that say
I'm
we're
kind of going off the top of my head and saying that, but if I just use those numbers and look at sort of a linear relationship to how and what we treat today, I think that's a reasonable way to think about it.
I'll do that.
Somewhere in that
Because-
100 to 120,000
because
population.
we know that we know that we're projecting to going to 94,000 people by 2022 or something other. So that's 4 years out. So if I can extrapolate that, say that I'm going 14,000 in the next 4 years, then I've got 8 years on this 140-something million.
I don't think I would say that short a time period.
Okay.
Yeah,
I won't.
I think you're looking more further out than that.
Further out?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be
Given
honest.
some of the population.
I'd be delighted to go further out.
Yeah, yeah.
More bang for the buck.
Just, and I don't know if you have this number either, but typically in working with CDM Smith, there's always this contingency number
Yeah.
that's on there. Is Zach's really good about that? Do you have an idea of what that number is here? Because I think that would help reduce some of the possible shell shock too. Because I learned that early on,
Yes.
that there's a buffer in there just to cover any change orders and things of that nature.
Is there a project contingency?
So there's no, there's contingency in the construction contract, but there's not contingency in CDM's contract.
Right, I guess that's what I meant, as in the,
Construction contract.
yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry?
Can we not get one? What do you mean?
I'm-
There's
I'm-
not
I don't think you want one. It's time and material projected out over the life of the project.
Are you with me,
The
Mark?
project itself has a contingency, though.
the project.
So-
The
itself.
construction
All
piece,
right,
talk
so
about
you're
what
not
that
talking
is.
material.
So the contingency is, it would be with Kiewit's, the
Right.
resolution that is
That's
passing.
my question.
That's what she's
okay.
talking about.
Yeah, so that's a, and I don't know.
Is it
the
a
exact-
percentage? Is it a dollar amount?
It's
It's a dollar
4
amount.
million.
Okay.
And that's a fund that's there in case we run into any unforeseen conditions that we can, with authorization, that
Got it.
Kiewit can,
Thank you.
can start with
So-
those.
Kiewit is holding that as the contractor.
They would hold that as part of their contract.
Yes.
And so everybody under that flows under that, okay.
So, yeah, so not CDM's is,
Yeah, no, no,
CDM
no,
Smith
because
is
they're
a
the
separate contract.
subcontractor,
Yep.
yeah,
If-
okay.
We're looking for a deduct. Those are the words we like. Deducts.
So,
These do happen
okay,
from time to
all right.
Any other comments on the
fine.
CDM Smith contract? Okay, we need to move on. We've got limited time. Next is professional services agreement with C&T Engineering and Inspection for the Goose Creek End Sanitary Sewer Extension Project, not to exceed $33,810.
So,
No problem with that one?
you're good? Great.
Should be reimbursed through
Yep.
the folks who are paying for that.
Item 7, Alderman Martin recused herself for the discussion, is an Amendment 6 to the professional services agreement with Smith Seckman Reed for the water treatment plant modifications project in an amount not to exceed $21,900.
So this is with SSR, and this is not, so important to note on this one, it is not additional monies that we're requesting, it's just a reallocation of their funds in their existing contract. They had, the way that they set their contract up, they had additional expenses that was in their initial amount, and this is just allocating those additional expenses from, expenses into labor.
Item 8 is a professional services agreement with Belker Associates and for a comprehensive assessment of odor emissions and their control in Franklin.
So this is something that the Water Management Department wanted to undertake this year in response to some of the odor complaints that we've received. So we're intending on doing an odor study complete with field monitoring, so gathering of air samples, in addition to some dispersion modeling around the wastewater plant, and then kind of going up to Founder's Point, and then up to Matt Catcher, that kind of general area that we've seen odor complaints in. And this will be an outside firm that we've not worked with before coming in to look and see where, if we do have an odor problem, where it is, and what we could potentially give us recommendations to fix, to do.
Everybody good with that one? Okay, we'll go on to item 9, which is consideration contract 2018-0152 for donation agreement with Barry Alexander Automotive LLC in the amount of $285,658.13.
We're getting free stuff.
I know, isn't that great?
Thank you, Alexander.
That's a lot of free stuff.
Question is,
too.
where do we store it?
We have storage
Yeah.
at the fleet maintenance.
Our fleet maintenance folks are excited to get this.
Not
This is
only
very
do we have
helpful.
storage, but they have the skills to replace as
Good.
needed. So there's no
Good.
additional cost to the city, no additional needs for staff or space.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Mhm.
Item 10 is a contract 2018-0146 with Thompson Reuters for Westlaw online legal research subscription. That's something you need?
It's something we need. It's something we've had since I've been here, so 10 years. It's just a renewal of the contract.
Go for it.
Okay, next is Resolution 2018-55, resolution awarding the construction contract to Renaissance in the amount of $30,829 for demolition of structures located at 403 and 405 Hillsborough Road.
We've had a lot of discussion over the last several weeks around the Hill. One of the things we talked about over a year or so ago was the demolition of the existing older structures up there. And we did go ahead and take bids for that demo work. We had that before you tonight. We'd like to move forward with that. There does not appear to be any ability to really truly use it in the meantime while we look at the redevelopment of the site, and would like to clean it up and clear it out. I think that would be the best for all involved.
Okay, we'll keep moving on.
Okay.
Next is item 13, which is a resolution to finalize the property acquisition associated with Fire Station number 7.
Missed number
You
12.
missed
Okay, let's go ahead with 13 since I'm
Okay,
there. and
sure.
then,
So as we're building Fire Station 7, we've got the site that we've worked a land swap essentially, or a donation from the county for property at the southern tip of the Ag Center property. In exchange for that, we're going to tie the Ag Center onto our sewer system, our sanitary sewer system. This is additional property that is just south of that site that we need for our access to the fire station, but also will be useful in the future for the extension of Goose Creek. So it seemed like now is the time to go ahead and secure it. The property owner is willing to work with us, and this acquires that property for around $450,000.
Okay, item
I
12
noticed
is.
The county assessed it at about 150 for property taxes, but I know.
We did a full
I
appraisal, and
know.
that is supported, so. It's only going up, so we thought it would be good to go ahead and get it now.
Okay, next is Resolution 2018-57, resolution awarding the construction contract to Adams Contracting LLC in the amount of $256,225, and I can't believe it, 10 cents, for the Carnton Lane Culvert Replacement Project.
Must be done.
Well,
This is the culvert that's failing, we need to replace it. The Streets is continuing to go out there and patch the road and try to maintain it, and it just covers the bid replacement. We're also asking for a buffer or contingency of $75,000 just to help us with any unforeseen conditions that pop up.
Sounds
well, the only thing is, this comes out of that stormwater fund that we're continuing to talk about. And, you know, we don't have that much extra money in any one year, from what I'm reading on how much it costs now. I mean, how much it costs for personnel and operations. That takes up basically almost 95% of what we get every year from stormwater. So there's not enough money in it in one year probably to pay for this.
Well, you've got a fund balance of $4.3 million
Exactly.
coming into this year.
But we've got
And
how
so
many,
that's
how
part
many
of,
millions?
and that's part of what we have on the
That's right.
agenda a little bit later.
That's
But
right.
that,
That's
this is a pretty urgent need in terms of the replacement and the failure that's happened here. It seems to be an appropriate project for this fund. We have larger, long-term needs to look at within this fund. If you don't pay for it here, we'll need to look at general fund or other funding source. So it's our judgment, you need to move forward on this project one way or another, and take your guidance on how you want to pay for it, but feel that that's an appropriate place to fund the project.
Okay, item 14 is Resolution 2018-53, authorizing staff to proceed with the home raising project developed by the United States Army Corps of Engineers as part of the Harpeth River feasibility study.
So we revised this resolution essentially to basically state that the city is willing to be the non-federal sponsor as part of the project, which means we would accept the 65% federal funding to raise these homes. I spoke with the Army Corps today. They are continuing to look at the number of houses and hope to have an answer within the next 2 weeks back to us as the number of houses that qualify. They're going back and looking at that cost-benefit ratio. But by approving this resolution does not make a commitment as to where the funds go. It just basically states that we are going to participate in the program. The next step is, they said by February, March timeframe, we need to try to figure out where that funding is gonna come from, because at that point, we'll need to start signing a contract with them to allocate the funding, whether we pay for it or the homeowners or some combination of it. But we have some time to figure that out, and we'll continue to work towards that.
Alderman Berger.
Question, okay, so tonight, this is only if we want to participate in the program, doesn't commit us to any funding whatsoever, but if we get accepted into this program, and they have committed 65%, and we decide not to fund any of it from the city's point, or city's part, then this program is still available, correct?
Correct.
And is it available if one homeowner wants it, or 10? Does it
It's a
matter?
completely voluntary program.
Right, okay.
But you cannot be in the program if you don't have
You
the
don't
local
allow-
government,
yeah,
like
exactly.
Franklin, sponsor it.
Yeah.
So we can't offer this to our residents if we
Right.
don't agree to be the non-federal sponsor, I think is the
Yeah,
appropriate term.
again, I'll say that I have no problem voting to put us in the program, but I will not open this Pandora's box. I will not pick and choose these. I mean, I know, Dana can argue too, before we've had this conversation about things that we've done, but, you know, when the theater came up, no, city did not give money to the theater. Masonic Lodge, I voted no on that. There's just a number of things, and if we continue down that path of anything that we've done, this is a huge this is a different animal altogether for the city to get into. And as I said, I have no problem for us entering the program, but I do have a problem taking city money to put in these individual homes.
Alderman Martin.
I know that that's not what we're talking about now. I know we're not talking about becoming financially involved in it, as far as the city goes. I also am for the program for the homeowners. And if they want to take this and do whatever they want to with it, I'm happy for them to do it, and I'm happy for the city to sponsor it. But I'm getting calls a lot from citizens who say, we do not want our tax money to go for raising someone's home. We do not want that. Also, I want to say, this paper right here that we got from Michael Young today has this shown in yellow, meaning I assume that we're looking at those things the city is. This is apart from what we're voting on tonight. I know that, I understand it. But I want to tell you, we have approved some things. For instance, the West Main Bridge, we have approved that and said we were going to do it, and then to pull everything that we've talked about in Battle Avenue off the table so we can do these other things that have come up. Does that mean we're never going to do what we say we're going to do? You know, why don't we do these things first that we said we were going to do, then we'll talk about what money's left. But to put that first, it is not fair to the residents.
Well, and this is part of what we're asking you to look at. You don't have enough money to do everything on this list.
I understand that.
So we've got to make some decisions around how the fund's structured, looking at what's assigned to it, what projects you want to do, what other options there might be to fund these projects. We have not looked at the structure of that fee from when it was created in the early 2000s. So all of that is what we'd like to do some more study of so that we understand how we're going to use these funds that come in and how we're going to structure this.
But didn't we talk about that bridge and didn't we
You've talked about all these
vote on it?
projects at
Let
different
me
times.
stop us right here. We're talking about whether to join the program. The next item happens to be the stormwater issues, so if we're ready to move on to that.
And let me just point out that it says city's portion only, total project cost of $2.7 million.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk
We can
about
talk
that
about
unless
that
y'all are
later.
ready to move on. I got
That's a
Alderman
house
McClendon,
raising.
do you wanna talk about item 14?
I do.
Please.
We have regularly committed taxpayer funds to improving public and private property for this, in a way that directly benefited some and indirectly benefited others and maybe even many. We dredged Jackson Lake at considerable expense to prevent flooding, to prevent damage to property. And we did that with taxpayer money. And we did that in spite of the fact that arguably someone else could have been left to deal with it. And we didn't ask Jackson Lake to pitch in. We didn't say, well, we'll come up with some of it if you come up with the rest. We did it because we determined that it was an appropriate project to protect property and lives. That's why we did that. I could think of others. I mean, I've railed on the Columbia Avenue streetscape project, but that didn't benefit indirectly anyone, other than if you just happen to like pretty bricks, because it didn't do a thing for traffic, and this board threw $2 million at it. And the only people that benefited directly from that were the landowners. God bless them. They got a great deal. So this notion that we're somehow doing something that we've never done, or that we've crossed some line from proper conservative thinking or something, we've been across it. And the difference now is that we can identify as far as I can tell, the only difference between this and many of the things that we've done is that there are actually individual homeowners who need this help. I guess some say that that's the best reason not to do it. I look at it differently. I think that's the best reason to do it. We have actual long time, and I don't even care if they're long time, but they are, taxpayers and citizens who stand to lose everything. We have a chance to enroll in a program and commit tax money to the public good. We are not all better off if we just let half of Lancaster and numerous other houses in my ward become overrun by the next flood. We're not better off if we do that. No one can make that argument that we're better off if we allow that to happen. So this philosophical problem that some of us seem to have with spending taxpayer money to benefit some while benefiting all, I'm not buying it. We've done it before, we'll continue to do it, and in this case, we have a funding leverage of 70-30 or something, 60-40 or 70-30. So I'm going to support this steadfastly.
Okay. I want to go back. We were trying to decide whether we were going to join the program.
Yeah.
Sure.
And at a future date, we'll decide, about
I know, yeah. So
how we're
I
going to
wanna sit on
participate
the
as a
discussion,
city.
so, yeah.
So if that's clear with everybody, we'll move on to the
Yes.
stormwater so we can
Yes.
talk
Yes.
about that and understand that better.
Yes.
So item 15 is stormwater project funding discussion.
This is a continuation. I know we ran out of time last time around on this item. We've updated it a little bit to show you, and this is at your place and also in the agenda materials, to show you what we think are projects that we are there's 3 projects in particular that we feel we are so far committed that we need to see through in terms of a failure and replacement in the case of the Maplewood Stormwater Project and the Carton Lane one we talked about previously, and the Jordan Branch piece. We've been through a long involvement with both the neighborhood and the permitting parts of that, and feel that those 3 projects are ones that we're so far into that we really need to complete those. The rest of those are ones that you have some more flexibility in terms of timing and how you do those. There's not a specific driver in terms of doing those at this time to make some choices, have some flexibility. As we talked about, there is a longer-term sustainability issue about where this fund is in terms of the types of projects that we've identified, the types of operations that we have earmarked for this fund over time, a combination of operational type of functions that the streets department performs that makes sense to assign to the stormwater function, some of the development services and regulatory oversight that we do primarily through the engineering department. All these are appropriate and worthy. They impact how development happens, they impact quality within the system, but they now are at a point that they eat up virtually all of the money that comes in each year. There is some growth in the fund over time as development and growth in the community happens, but it provides precious little capacity as it's structured today to do the projects that you have on the list. I don't know that tonight is the night or the time to go through projects specifically. We do have some capital project work that we will do with you later in the summer. That might be something to think about. I think the ask I would have from you after some discussing however you want to go with this item is some direction or endorsement of the staff doing some work to analyze this fund more completely in terms of how it's structured, what's in it, what we've added to it over time, how it fits with how this fund is envisioned to work, and what options there might be around the structure of that fee and that fund as well. Something we haven't looked at in over 15 years of its existence in terms of how it's structured. How does that match with how it works today, and what people were implementing stormwater fees and funds are also doing now compared to what we did when we started it. We were one of the first local governments anywhere to have something like this. So we want to revisit it and get your endorsement to do so. It will take us a while. It's probably not something we would not talk about till this next budget or the budget after that, but we need to do it. We'll have to look at how we use the remaining resources that are there carefully in the meantime, and that's really the guidance I'd like to get from you tonight.
Alderman McClendon.
If memory serves, I was on the committee that helped write these to begin with. And as I recall, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, we were hopeful to raise enough money to clean out ditches now and again. It was never conceived as a funding mechanism for major capital improvements, ever. Now, should it be that now? Well, maybe. But it was never conceived as that. It was, we drafted it and created it to raise money to do stormwater maintenance, basically. I mean, like repair, clean out a culvert and buy a truck and fund a position. I don't recall that it was ever, I mean, I wouldn't have ever thought that we were driving towards a $10 million ask type scenario. That said, these are worthy projects, but they don't not get done just because the Stormwater Fund doesn't have the money. We just have to debate whether or not they're worthy of inclusion in the capital improvements plan for general fund allocation. It would be great if we had if our stormwater fund, was set up and funded sufficiently on its own to cover all what we can, the way we connect the dots. I mean, we have this stormwater fee, and then we have what we've classified as stormwater projects. And there's a certain amount of logical symmetry there, but that doesn't mean that I'm not sure that we could ever figure out a way to have the revenue match the demand. I'm not sure that we should, even if we could. But these are capital projects that happen to be stormwater related. That's how I look at this. I don't look at this as we only have this much money coming in from the stormwater fees, and therefore we have to pick a winner and a whole slew of losers. I look at this as worthy projects, some of which can be, the expense for which can be somewhat offset by our stormwater fee revenue, but never is it going to be, I mean, our stormwater fee revenue is never gonna match the projects that we could put down under the category of stormwater capital improvement projects. So, I don't know when we will next do a capital improvements project ranking.
Soon.
Good. These should be included. And if the will of the board, if the board coalesces around making one of these a priority, then it gets funded. So I'm perfectly happy to have this conversation, but I don't want it to be framed in a way that there's going to be winners and losers, because there's only a fraction of the money that's necessary to do all these worthy projects. You make some great points about those capital projects. Are you willing to look into the stormwater fee as it currently exists? Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we did it, God, it's been so long. I mean, we did it on like a permeable, so, I mean, we never did it it was never as, well, it's fairly sophisticated, but it was never we never did it in a way that our impact fee, our road impact fees or anything, it didn't. So I'm perfectly happy to look at it again, but well, let me move us on a little bit if I could. I've got Alderman Martin followed by Alderman Peterson, then Alderman Barnhill.
All right, these two items that you have highlighted are huge. We have been talking about Battle Avenue for years, and we sat here and went over that with the residents, and we talked about all of those things, and I thought some decisions were made. I thought that. I may have been wrong. The West Main Bridge, you said we're gonna be about 3 million. It said it was gonna be about 3 million to do what we should do with all of those things. We said, no, we don't want that. We just want a way to get across that bridge without being killed. And so you brought it down to 400 and something, whatever it was. And so I thought we decided to do it. I thought this board voted on it.
We did.
You did?
You did. You voted on resolutions on both of them.
Okay, we voted on it. So,
Not on Battle.
You did not
We
come
did
to a
not.
conclusion on
No,
Battle.
I'm not talking about Battle, I'm
About
talking
what
about
they
the
just
bridge.
said.
The bridge, you gave us a design approval, yeah.
I did what?
You approved a design approach on
For the
that.
bridge?
Yes.
Okay. But those things were important. We did a survey, y'all did Carl or somebody went up there and counted the children and the bikes and all that going across that bridge. That was a lot of legwork to prepare that. And I don't see why we can't do those things first that we've spent a lot of time on talking about it, and we pretty much all agreed that they were things that needed to be done. Now, when this house raising thing has come up, it hadn't been here in front of us more than 2 months.
I beg your pardon, it started in 2013.
Not this program.
Not
Yet-
this,
No,
and
It-
not,
it-
we were
indeed.
not offered 65%.
No, we were not, but
That's
the-
exactly what I'm talking
Okay.
about.
But they,
That's
they
exactly
came,
what
they
I'm
came
talking
in and
about.
said they would talk about elevating
Well,
or
that's
buying
fine.
in 2013.
That is just fine, but it didn't come before us more than 2 months ago about this 65%. And for
Okay.
the rest of it to come either from the city or somewhere else. So I don't see why we can't do what we said we were gonna do on the front end and then talk about these other things. To just eliminate everything and say, oh, we're gonna reprioritize. You know, we're not getting anything done. And I don't think it's fair to the people that we've talked about and talked to about this. And as you heard the last time we talked about it, that little couple that said they'd waited for 2 years to even plan. I don't think that's the way we should do things. Anyway, that's my thought about it, and I will not support the city having any part in any of these things until we get done what we said we were gonna do.
Alderman Peterson.
Thank you. I first of all want to say, we have not prioritized any stormwater, as far as I know, whenever we were prioritizing projects. There was never any stormwater project that showed up in our priority of capital funding. Secondly, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, whenever you have the budget, it just showed a set amount of money that was going to go into stormwater. It never listed the projects. And that is from at least 3 or 4 years ago, because I think I looked back all the way there. So they were never prioritized. They were brought to us, and you know, and as we've all said, there's always been more worthy projects than there's money to spend. But they were never prioritized by this board. They were talked about here, but in terms of saying this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, never done, ever
We're
done.
gonna have that opportunity.
Exactly, exactly. But to say again that why would something come up right now? Well, it's because, you know, the Corps of Engineers has told us that they will give some money for it. That's the reason that it's come up right now. But again, in 2013, the city, along with, I believe, Brentwood and the county and maybe Nashville, all agreed to a Corps of Engineers study, and they had, as part of it, was elevating houses, but also it was buying and, you know, and demolishing them, thank you. And so that has taken them this long to come up with, well, there were 2 things. One of them was talking about elevating the houses, and the other one was the bridge over here on Franklin Road for the culverts. And so we have been talking about this, you know, since that came up, and that's been at least 2 years ago.
I'm gonna we need to kind of move along if you
Okay.
could, because we're going to come back to this again.
just discussion.
I'll recognize Alderman Barnhill if he
But
wants
could
to
I-
make a
I wanna-
comment.
May I finish just a few things? Other people have had more time than I have this time.
I don't know that I've timed anybody, Alderman
no.
Peterson. If you're timing, I'd like to see the time chart,
Okay.
but you're welcome to make a few more
Well,
comments.
I do want to say that this is something that affects a number of people, and it is, in a sense, dangerous situations, as you know, especially since the 2010 flood. Even people that haven't lived here all their lives know that there are a lot of places that flood here, and they put people in danger. And at least out of these, more than half of them were built by the city, and the city had things even before that that said that you should not build any residential buildings in floodplains.
And that's our fault?
Well, they said that was their rule.
50 years later, that's our fault.
Well, wait, just a minute,
not
please.
buying it.
All right, let me say to you, the ordinance that they had in 1967 said no residential buildings in floodplains. But these were allowed to be built
And that's our
in the floodplain. Well, I guess they had building permits, did they not?
But it's not our fault.
Okay, but my other point is, the number of families that would be affected by this is much greater, and the effect on them is much greater than some of the other projects that we have talked about before and that we have done before even. And that is my point.
Okay, this will be back. We'll have some more discussion about it. I think if I've read you correctly, you are interested in looking at the stormwater fee, but you want more discussion on these projects and opportunity to rank them in the capital project list.
The fee, the fund structure.
That's right,
And
the
the,
funding
we'll
structure.
look at those projects and priorities. The other piece that's important with this Army Corps piece is they are looking at the potential that some additional properties could be added. So I don't think we can have that discussion until we know whether it's 26 or 56, just because of the resources that might be involved. So, and I don't know what that number is. I just threw that out there. But there is some additional review of some properties in and around these same areas that could become eligible. So this number of 26 could grow. We want to know that before we make decisions about what we're committing to, and we'll give you that information as we get it.
And point out, the discussion that we have had, in 2010, we spent 32% on personnel and operations. We had all the rest of that to spend on projects. Projected in 2019, we are spending 94 or 95% on personnel and operations, with virtually no money left for capital projects. So we did say that we would also look at
Yeah,
how.
that's part of the structure.
That's
We're
part
gonna
of the
make sure you
structure. Thank
understand what's in there. It is the cleaning out ditches, it is street sweeping, it is the oversight, the qualified local program that we now run that helps
Exactly.
oversee stormwater and stormwater impacted by development. They're all worthy, they're all appropriate, but it's the mix that you want to pull out of this fund, from projects to operations, and that's part of what we'll facilitate, as well as looking at the fee structure.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to the next one, and I didn't anticipate that we would finish on number 16, but we'll give it a start, which is a consideration of various design elements, including bike and pedestrian facilities, utility relocations, access management for the Columbia Avenue widening and improvement project. And I think this is going to be more of a informational presentation to the board, maybe a few questions, and we're going to try to move it on along so that we don't start the board meeting too long.
I would expect we're bringing
Thank
this
you.
back to you on the 14th
Do
as
your
well.
part.
This is obviously a very complex project, something we spent a lot of time on last year, looking at options, design options for Columbia Avenue. You gave us direction on that. We've worked with Federal Highway on some approvals, and we've gotten those back, and now we're looking at refining some of the elements around utilities, the pedestrian facilities, and access management components that was part of this. So we know that's really important. Our intent is not to try to answer everything tonight, but to start the discussion, give you an overview. We have reached out to 130-plus people that had participated in the public meetings around Columbia Avenue previously. We'll make sure they stay informed about where you are in this process. And I'll let Paul kind of walk through this with you so you get a sense of the type of considerations that are coming through this process. And we look forward to your guidance as we work through this over the next 2 meetings.
Okay, so as Eric stated, the environmental document, or the NEPA, was recently approved by Federal Highways Administration, which allows us to move on to the next phase. However, before we move on to the next phase, we really want to get 3 questions answered by the board, or get your direction and feedback on. In September of 2017, the board approved a resolution approving that typical section, essentially curb to curb, of what that typical section was. This shows the 5-lane. There are sections where we incorporated a median, but for just graphics sake, we just showed the 5-lane typical section up here. That plan also included an access management portion, but we've also heard from the board that they'd like to revisit the access along this corridor. And so the 3 items that we're looking for feedback, and then we'll try to walk you through these, are, the first one is, how do we handle the bike and ped element associated with this roadway? What do we do behind the curb and gutter? So there are 3 options that we're proposing. There are many options that we can have. This can be modified in multiple different ways. The first one really is nothing more than the city standard. That's what was shown in all the functional exhibits. We felt that was appropriate, given it being a city standard, to show it. It's a 12-foot wide multi-use trail, 6-foot grass strip on one side of the road. On the other side of the road, it would be a 6-foot grass strip and a 6-foot sidewalk. Again, that is a typical city standard. However, that can be modified to accommodate whatever situation you're in. The next option is really looking at a more urbanized typical section. This one has 8-foot sidewalks with a 4-foot furnishing zone that would have your tree wells in its signs, light poles, etc. It could be paved up to the back of the curb in certain areas with tree wells in the other area. It's what we would call the furnishing area. It's more of you'd see it more in an urbanized section, very similar to Columbia Avenue. I think it's the streetscape section that we did. It's just a little bit wider. The last option is where we just take those sidewalks and put them up against the back of the curb. It's something that you see TDOT do very often on many transportation projects. When you do that, your light poles have to go behind the curb and gutter. Your signs have to go, behind the sidewalk. Your signs go behind the sidewalk. You don't necessarily getting into doing a lot of plantings, but it is an option. What you'll notice with all these, we have option A, B, and C, and then we have double A, double B, and double C. One is showing underground utilities, the other one is showing overhead utilities. And so that's the next thing we're trying to look for direction on, is how do we handle the utilities along this corridor? If we put them underground, our current estimate is around $10 million, which would be funded by the city. The feds will not fund that. And so we're just seeking your direction on how you want to handle utilities along this corridor. And the last thing is, we're looking for your feedback on how we go about handling access management. We had put a lot of effort into the access management plan. We had hoped that a resolution would give us that guidance so we can move into design. However, the board has said they want to revisit that. We're happy to do that. We just need your guidance on which access points you want to revisit along the corridor, or is it the entire corridor? The last thing is, I asked Jim Sabota to be here today from our planning department, just to briefly talk about Envision Franklin, the land use. And as you know, land use really drives your transportation infrastructure, the look, the feel, the character of it. And the roadway also helps drive your land use. They go together. And so I asked Jim just to give you a brief overview of what Envision Franklin says as it relates to bike and ped, because that's an important part of this project.
Thanks, Paul. Both Envision Franklin and we have the Columbia Avenue Overlay District as well. They both recommend and support multimodal and pedestrian connections and facilities along this corridor. It's, as Paul mentioned, one of our more urbanized corridors in the city, and it's identified as a mixed-use corridor on our transportation matrix. So the design concepts from downtown range from core commercial to residential to neighborhood mixed use, that around the Downs Boulevard intersection to industrial flex and neighborhood commercial around the McCatcher intersection. Given all the historical resources along this corridor and the involving mixed use and commercial development that's occurring on Columbia Avenue, pedestrian options that are shown in both option A and B would be supported by Envision Franklin and would be appropriate for this corridor. So that's a quick summary.
What would be appropriate?
Either A or B, I think, would be supported by Vision Franklin with either the two options with the sidewalks and multi-use paths.
What's the major difference between A and B again?
A has the
trees.
6-foot grass strip, a 6-foot
6 foot.
sidewalk on one side, and a 12-foot wide multi-use trail on the other.
How much, 12 foot?
12-foot wide. And option B is more of an urbanized section where you have a 4-foot furnishing zone that's used for street trees and tree wells and
Street
garbage
for sure.
cans, street lights, signs, et cetera, with an 8-foot wide sidewalk on the back end.
And this is an evolving corridor, so with the speed limit, I think you said was gonna be around 35 miles per hour, you would be appropriate to have that type of cross-section in this area. So it's just kind of what you're looking for, but both Envision Franklin would support both concepts.
And the B gives you the lights up further to the street.
Yes, you'd put that in the furnishing
Yeah,
zone. the
well,
4-foot
this is an
furnishing
urban
zone.
area.
Right, it
This
is,
is a
it's
very
evolving.
urban area, yeah. Very
So
good.
is
No way, it's
the
not- it's
right,
not
is the
urban.
section the same width
not
in all of
country.
these options?
So
It's not
the
rules.
right-of-way acquisition generally varies depending on the option that you choose. But what I would say is the utility impact that we have is generally going to be the same on all these different concepts. And that's why in the exhibit, if you look at it closely, we showed you what that proposed right-of-way is, which is generally about a foot behind the sidewalk. But then we showed your utility impact or area of impact. Now, the overhead utility option, you start putting utility poles in, you know, they require a 40-foot easement, so 20 foot on one side of the right-of-way is a big area of impact of easement that we have to acquire. However, the property underneath it's still usable, and it's just really which direction you want to go. So we try to show you both of right-of-way impact and area of impact as it relates to utilities. And this is very conceptual, and where we can neck it down and limit impact, we're absolutely going to try to do that. But in some areas where we're running 2 or 3 gas lines, parallel Columbia Avenue, they have 3 different sizes out there, it could become very difficult. So we're going to have to work closely
And
with
it can
utilities.
affect the properties, much more significant to put it overhead lines, because then you have that 40 feet,
But wait.
correct?
That is correct. It's a-
I'm
it's a-
asking you.
It's a
Yeah.
bigger impact, but the property underneath it is still usable for
Usable.
parking.
Yeah, usable, sure.
But it is a bigger footprint of impact as it relates to acquisition.
Yeah, there you go, thank you. That's
Alderman
what I
Bland.
wanted. Okay.
I know we're not gonna be able to dig too deep into this, but I am thankful that the access points has been brought back up, because to me, that's one of the most important parts of this project. Just because there's so many businesses who have no frontage or limited frontage, and I think by cutting off their, what in some cases, and I'm not gonna start calling out business names, but they have full access right now in front of their businesses. I understand that we need to keep connectivity in mind as it comes to pedestrian walkways. In my opinion, this is a very industrial part of Franklin on the Matt Catcher part of it. I think redevelopment's probably gonna occur throughout my lifetime in some capacity, but I don't know that we need a 12-foot multimodal pedestrian. I think that's overkill, especially when you consider the businesses and how they're situated on that road. And I'll give you an analogy. If you look at what we're fixing to officially open as the sidewalk on 96 East, I was fixing to say dumbed it down, but I just said it. We reduced that down to a 5-foot sidewalk so that we would be,
Less
you know,
impact.
Less invasive.
mindful of those homeowners there. And I think by the same token, we need to be really mindful of how we are affecting businesses that have been there 50, 60, 70 years that are a huge part of who we are. I'm not saying they're more important than the other business, but if we remember a year ago, this is a very contentious project. We got past the roundabout struggle and the 5-lane struggle, but this is the most important part, because this is where it really is going to be decided the fate of some people and their livelihood. So I want to go ahead and put that out there to say thank you. I know all those times you're like, yes, Brandy, we're gonna talk about access points. So I'm glad, but I also think we need to be really careful about whether Envision Franklin supports it or not. Sometimes we need to use our institutional knowledge too and listen to our constituents as to what they need to happen to make everybody happy.
I'm gonna recognize Alderman Bransford, and then we're gonna finish the last item and
Just
quit.
a comment.
And this will be back.
Yeah.
We're bringing this back.
Can we make it the first on the agenda?
Are there bike lanes? Am I just not seeing it on this? Are there bike lanes?
There are no bike lanes, but it is an option to try to add a bike lane and reduce the sidewalk. I mean, we can.
No, I'm just
Okay.
want to know, as of now, is there a bike lane
No bike
there?
lanes.
So, okay.
They just have to share the road.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, does everybody understand what we're gonna have to decide? We're gonna go back over the access points, and we're gonna come back and talk about what sections, you know, basically is how wide is the sidewalk, how wide is the green strip, or is everything pushed up against the road?
That's right, and also, what about undergrounding utilities or not?
That'll be a choice
That'll be,
too.
that'll also be.
That's a
$10 million
$10 million
charge.
local
Exactly.
price
I
tag.
understand.
And we just
So
saved
if
$10
that's a
million.
no-go,
And it's not coming out of stormwater though.
We just, hi, we
it's not
just,
coming out of stormwater, I can tell you that.
well, we just saved 10 million on McEwen with the state.
Right, so we'll
that
use
was the
that
$10 million gift, let's put it over here.
We'll use that 10 million.
Okay, this is coming back. It'll be the
That'll
first
be-
item on the list next time. So item 17 is Resolution 2018-59 to extend the employment contract with City Administrator Eric Stuckey.
I don't know about that.
That might
This on the voting
Have it
section.
tonight.
No.
So, all right. This will take him to 2022.
All right.
Oh, is that all?
Okay,
We
we'll
like-
see you in about 15 minutes.
Sounds good.
Thanks for the Columbia Avenue folks for coming.
Thanks for coming, you guys.